Tesla some of the under the paper Kingazuki Karsore Lomni about Khenpo Mriti Chota and then was a Pinzigi Leje Kagashi to Peshi and Yansi Tedon with the Penga Samuel Thomas Tesla some Shuata. Did a chapsi and that Rigi Tamshi per Nangberry Began and Save D. Nangberry was near catching Bushi wishing Bosonsa and Deaconata Shipta Ki Karsore, Tamshi and Khenpo Mriti Konagi, Sungere, the Demo Sungene, the Khenpo Mriti Konagi, Modu Torti Shuna something at Tuzishida, what the Magatola, Chishuna Sams. And Khenpo Mriti and the Kona Savet and Payu Nerisha, Payu Pora Nerisha, and Pora in the Pa. Chigil Mutana, Canada la Pape, Canada Pape, Pagiloption on the page, Pagiloption change, and Pane, the Purumba Tuanasha, and McGill University, Toronto, McGill University, one day, Purumba Tuanasha. And the term was Tobo Mase, the McGill University, the Puri, the Purumba, Chagarang, Tambud Chadesha, I think I'm sure somebody. Tadan Khenpo Mriti Konadi Tambud Chadesha. Takurang Tanda Yamshi Zo and Nanguli Karikari Redu Severisha, and Nangshu Tang, and Heya and Tandira Natural Chuba, Uma Rangube Luki, and Sanga Rikwache, Purik Bache, and Ambikumruki, Toshi Chebe, and Simple Rikwa Yamnenche, and for Ashegi, Chulukache, and Ashi Saku Ki and Logyutang, and Chizo Che, and the Rishunla software and Denham the Mangush to Chadesha. And the Dingala Tanda Niton Chugunang Lola and the British Columbia University in Tatanang, this is MA Sigua, Sugla Ranjaba and to Tensha. And the Nitonsa, Chikton Gupjukochi, Ne Cheche Niton Parto, and the Payuki and the Pograla, Pogla Yubet and the Nanangbe Tine Kanchitu. Kama Mare, Vikram Lashilasi, and Corandina, and Kaju, Kama Kaju, Chulu, Chuluki, and the Kimbe Lomia, Lusnang Shusha. And the Konagi that loved it, that's how it and I Canada, Takona did Boroma Tumbo songs, and Canada Nango Yugi, Pevegit and a Carsoreta, Tiro Carsora, Sawat in the Yore, and in the Labdachin in the Yore, and the Anashi in the Gagalache, and the Paila. And the Yasum Nangola Pazo, and Pevegi and Berry Quache, and Pevek Keripa Rantola, and those Tamsha Mangushinansa, and then the Lobjun, the Lopid in the Mangushinansa. And Digala and Konangi Chesum de Tanangazi Damberi Begi Tola, and Chesum de Tanangazi Pegi, Tanatuba, and the Tibet Janache, and the Pegi to what on the dish of Tamso, that the Ning on the Peg Benzakan to Stone Angora, and they shall do Chadesha, and they remember any to the Shamadunele and Chesum de Tanansha. But into Nangsha. I think in total big issues, so I welcome you all to our LTWA talk series. Let me introduce our speaker very briefly without taking much time. The Khenpo Mriti is a native Tibetan scholar who recently earned his PhD degree in 2025. Recently means in 2025, degree from McGill University, Canada. Right, so he holds the historic distinction of being the first Tibetan to receive doctoral degree from that university. Before that, he was studying in the University of British Columbia, where he did MA in Asian Studies. And from 1991 to 2000, Khenpo received his training in Khenpo in Kama Kagyu tradition in Pokhara, Nepal. So his research mainly focuses on Buddhism, Yogacara Abhidharma, psychology, Tibetan studies, and contemplative practice focused on Buddhist meditation, Asian South Asian religions, historical, social, cultural studies of Asian religions. Besides, he also taught at various academic institutions in Canada, India, and Nepal. So he had some articles published on Tibetan studies in Tibet Journal and Tamso. Both of these periodicals are published by the LTWA, this institute, and besides also he has published several articles in other periodicals as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ngawai Shela, for your warm introduction about me. Yeah, let me, I don't know how to say, maybe let me correct a few points here, okay? So I recently graduated from McGill University, which is in Montreal, Canada, which is a francophonic region. And when it comes to my graduation or the research I earned as a PhD, I am the only one who graduated from that field. Is not in general in McGill, but in the religious studies department. I'm the first one to be completed dissertation or graduated in Buddhist studies. Yeah, I know there are many seniors who completed PhD from McGill University. There are some Tibetans prior to me, so I'm the not first one in general. I'm the first one in my department. There is a School of Religious Studies at McGill University. Okay, so before beginning the talk, I would like to thank the Tibetan Library for giving me this opportunity. Of course, that my sincere gratitude goes to the director, Keshe Lagdolla, and of course, in practical way that I have corresponded with the Ngawai Shela, and then the entire team of Tibetan Library has put effort to make this happen, and therefore, I'm really grateful, and I would like to thank all of you for your efforts in running this institute, and particularly giving me this opportunity, okay? I'm not a renowned scholar, neither good, maybe, practitioner, but I tried my best for the rest of my life to put into understand Buddhism, specifically how mind functions from the Buddhist point of view. So therefore, I choose this topic, and now I think that I have something to offer to my community, Tibetan communities around the world, as well as international audience, that whoever is interested in Tibetan Buddhism in general, and then in particular in Buddhist psychology. We will see later, okay? So the second point I want to make here is that I was very fortunate to be completed my PhD in the year that His Holiness reached his 90th year, and that Tibetans around the world are celebrating His Holiness 90th birth anniversary. And I coincide my study in celebration of that significant and auspicious anniversary. The reason why I came to Dharamsala is, of course, to get more experience about my exiled community, the center administrative here, but more importantly, actually, I come here to offer my dissertation to His Holiness. This is like a lifetime achievement that I'm gonna have tomorrow morning. So this is the reason. And everyone has different way to celebrate His Holiness' birthday, and this is my way, okay? Scholarly way, I convey talks internationally on Buddhist psychology because this is the way how I got opportunity. It's a great coincidence. I could have graduated last year, or I could have graduated next year, but no, I graduated on the right year so that we all enjoy the celebration of His Holiness 90th anniversary, as well as that comes together with the year of compassion. So actually my dissertation, I'm going to give it to Tibet Library Archive, and whoever is interested in reading my dissertation, please contact the related department of that, okay? Because you will know then that on my acknowledgement, I began with, lots of efforts, and there are indications. It is not that easy to write wherever I like, but I manage to write everything I want, what I want, because I acknowledge that this dissertation is in service of His Holiness' dream. Because among the 4 commitments of His Holiness, this fits under the 3rd category, which is to preserve and promote Tibetan culture and Tibetan Buddhism. Especially, His Holiness always promotes the psychological part of Buddhism, because he believes this is the truly treasure of Tibetan knowledge that we could offer to the world. So my dissertation is totally about Buddhist psychology from Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan point of view. So therefore, it well sits to serve His Holiness' commitments and his wishes. I feel as it is my responsibility as a Tibetan. Okay, so let's see how it goes. Is that sounds okay? Chazangi inji dakamji edi cook inji kenang doa. Okay. Nde chidangendi tanda jamgurumchi the konlo kuju kobe tudin zamlin kasakala ya ani tinang yudu the tab tunchine ya ani ngende dissertation di dela ya jamgurumchi le pu ngarangi ngwenerwa ani digi sungji shudan naminazo yewe nani da kebetsul de tumbi goni ani dizum di tone da ani kharsorji chapel tang di tone angende jamgurumchi konlo kuju korba tsong shuye da ani pyoge na shu di zamblin kasakala peliegi tapshi yin di shuye nge kazingoma toronto ngo zuksa I began this promote of talks on Buddhist psychology from Toronto already, from Canada. This is the 3rd series that I'm going, and I will keep going to different countries and different communities, okay? So the outline is very simple. I don't like to make things complicated, and the simple way might be better for an unknown audience. Normally, when I give talks, then I would like to know the backgrounds of audience, but here it is difficult to know. So therefore, the simple presentation might be the best, I think. And this is the way how I do. So outline is very simple, right? First half of the talk, we will look into a conceptual framework of Buddhist psychology, and then there are many Buddhist like mental factors, mental functions, and then we will dive into the 5 factors with determinate objects. Okay, these are technical terminologies, and it's not that easy to follow for unfamiliar scholars. But we will later introduce about what are those 5 factors and so on. So I will finish this talk with the question and answers. I would like to give you space to ask your questions. If I have an answer, definitely. If I don't have, I would like to be frank and honest. So the first thing what we need to ask is, what is Buddhist psychology? Okay, this is an important question. The reason why we need to ask this question is Buddhist psychology is not a typical mainstream concept of traditional Buddhist studies around the world, okay? It is neither from the Tibetan Buddhism nor from the Theravadan tradition, even not from the Chinese Buddhist tradition. It is a modern construction, the Buddhist psychology. Therefore, we need to ask, is this talk fit into a traditional presentation of Buddhism, or it fits into the modern understanding of Buddhist studies of mind? So my answer to this is when it comes to the terminology, the concept Buddhist psychology, it was coined by British scholars in the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century. Most probably it goes to a British colonial scholar such as Rhys Davids, both T.W. Rhys Davids and Caroline Rhys Davids. They were the pioneer scholars who constructed the idea, because during the colonial period they visited Sri Lanka and those South Asian countries, and they were attracted to Buddhism and Buddhist tradition while they generally colonized the country. That actually tells us Buddhism can be adopted by any countries, any languages, any ethnicities. I guess maybe there's no single history in India while British colonized India, but maybe not Hindu religion has colonized British. Did that happen? I haven't heard so far these stories, but Buddhism truly, there are many British scholars existed since they colonized South Asian countries such as Sri Lanka especially. So they were the ones that created Buddhist psychology as a terminology, conceptual framework goes to those contemporary scholars. Okay? So then the second question what we need to understand is Buddhist psychology a philosophy? Is it a discipline? Where does it fit into the contemporary studies of Buddhist psychology, Buddhist studies of mind? So then, yet to actually recognize in the modern psychology by modern psychologists, Buddhist psychology is not part of contemporary or modern psychology. What we need to understand, modern psychology in the universities is a discipline, but Buddhist psychology does not fit into them. They still has not acknowledged Buddhist psychology as a discipline. And then where does Buddhist psychology come from? And actually Buddhist psychology fits into the Buddhist philosophy. Okay? Broadly, it has more than 2,500 years history. And where does then, how do we study Buddhist psychology in the contemporary universities? And then sometimes we study under the concept of religious studies as a department, and sometimes under the psychology, but not exactly as a discipline. And then contemplative research. Buddhist psychology is an emerging field. It is yet to be fully, completed, the body to be entered to the modern psychology. And then how do we recognize Buddhist psychology in a traditional point of view? And in traditional point of view, in Buddhism, it is called mostly the study of mind. We contemplate, we study, we contemplate, we meditate upon mind. That is how traditionally we recognize the study of mind as a Buddhist psychology. Okay, so philosophical and disciplinary differences of Buddhist psychology. This is a very important, especially from the Asian studies. Those students who wants to study something like Tibetan studies or Buddhist studies in the West, in North America, and then you need to understand difference between the philosophical approach and a disciplinary construction within the universities, That means if you look for Buddhist psychology or even Buddhism as a disciplinary topic, and then you will not find in the West. That is not there. But you have to look from the philosophical, Asian studies, and theological studies, and then you will find Buddhist studies. Okay? So yesterday I got chance to visit Tibetan Museum, and very beautiful, and then I took some snaps. I hope these photos are familiar to you. Actually, I should ask before I reveal that, So then the photo says, how is Buddhist science different from Buddhist religion? This is a very good question, actually. We really need to think about that. Because one of the major arguments, we all need to know, actually, all Tibetans, intellectuals, should know that His Holiness has reconstructed the categories of Kangyur and Tengyur, the Buddha's teaching, that fits to the modern society needs. And we cannot put, everything under religion. The point here is, all Buddha's teachings cannot be treated as a religious material. That is what has been done in 19th centuries when the Western scholars look into the Buddhism and different Asian religions. But that is actually not the case here. And His Holiness restructured the categories, and he argued that science, philosophy, and religion, this is a new 3 categories that we need to look into Kangyur when we restructure the Kangyur. And His Holiness argues that science and philosophy are not necessarily to be treated as a religious. Therefore, topic in the Kangyur and Tengyur, such as a Buddhist psychology, has not necessarily to be treated as a religious. It is for everyone, anyone. It's here, the quote is here, right? If we think of Buddhist literature in terms of science, philosophy, and religion, these are the 3 categories, then the religious part is only of interest to Buddhists. But the science and philosophy can be of interest to anyone. And this is a very timely, needed category, and we need to keep in mind, because now I start to understand there are so many Westerner visitors in Tibet library and museums in Dharamsala. Most of them might be like seeking to understand the Tibetan culture, Tibetan knowledge system, and exile government. Therefore, if we really truly know the what His Holiness actually wish to promote to the world, and then we can be better wise for His teachings. Yeah. Okay, so then now we will narrow down, okay? A general structure we understand. Now then the question is, what is Buddhist psychology? Within the Buddhist framework, okay? We understood general discipline, but now within the Buddhist knowledge system, then what is Buddhist psychology? And Buddhist psychology itself is quite large topic to be discussed, to be studied. Therefore, we have to narrow it down. We have to, this is the beauty of the Western studies. They specify the topic, they dissect. Almost like a omniscient is impossible in Western studies. Polymath is almost impossible in Western studies. Because therefore, they said, one person for the major part of life can be mastered in 1, 2, maximum 3 topics, but not more than that. So therefore they dissect, and actually it makes us a very good understanding of the topic. So when we say Buddhist psychology, you cannot take it as a general topic. We need to, break it down. I break it down according to His Holiness, the Mind, the second volume of Science and Indian Classics. I hope that you are familiar with this book. There are 4 volumes in English, translated from Tibetan. And if you are interested in Buddhist psychology, you have to study that. Okay? Tibetans, we need to get to habits of readings. That is the one challenge, in the Tibetan society, because majority of the Tibetans are almost like illiterate, right? The fact is prior to 1959, if we count the literate and illiterate numbers in Tibet, 90% is illiterated. But now we all have access to education, therefore we should promote education properly, right? And I just bumped into His Holiness quote on this, Pedion Lopta, says, to function the highest power of humanity, one need to have an education. So, therefore, the Tibetan community everywhere in the world, we have opportunity and we should promote education. And reading is one of the major educations. It's a very good habit, and I really urge everyone to read, especially to give influence or habits for their children, Tibetan children. So of course, it's not only for Tibetan children, everyone in the world, but I here represent as a Tibetan and a voice of Tibet. So therefore, that I hear majority is also Tibetan. Therefore, I speak for Tibetans, to Tibetans, okay? Yeah, so, I'm sorry, I'm almost like debating my topic. Yeah, when Buddhist psychology, and then there are Abhidharma aspect of Tibetan psychology, okay? Abhidharma means, Abhidharma is the primary Buddhist philosophical text. It is one of the 3 baskets, or 3 pitaka, or tenusum. And then Abhidharma in English term, conceptually we can translate as a Buddhist phenomenology. I don't know if you are familiar with that term or not, but this could be the most point. I will let you know. And then we have Buddhist epistemology, okay? Buddhist epistemology also talks about mind and its functions, but different than Abhidharma. So the distinction between these 2 is that Abhidharma look into mind from its a phenomenal point of view, means we are looking into the entity and functions of mind, whereas Buddhist epistemology looks into the relationship between object and subject, okay? Perceiver and perceived, what to be perceived. From that point of view, so then Buddhist epistemology, explains the functions of mind. And then there's another one, that is the Buddhist mind training, okay? This itself is a category. It differs from the first 2. The mind training approach to Buddhist psychology is, of course, dealing with the mind and its object, but it has a specific meaning. The meaning is to counter the obstacles, atrocities, how to directly counter, deal with the problems. That is the specialty of mind training. If you train mind well, you will better handle any problems in life. And that is directly related, and it comes from the Buddhist mind training, right? And not only that, if you really understand the mind training, Buddhist mind training, and then even those obstacles and atrocities in life can be transformed into a favorable condition of life. And that is how mind training literature teach us about the mind, the beauty of mind. Therefore, it falls under an individual category. And lastly is the Buddhist Tantra. Buddhist Tantra also speaks about mind, right? But from a different point of view. Buddhist Tantric deals with the energies and the nerve systems and from the proper channel and methods, apply onto the physical channels, then we can play with the mind and hopefully transform mind into an enlightened mind, ordinary mind. And that is another topic. And I haven't studied yet, but actually Tibetan medicine has a lot to offer about the mind and its functions. And that is related to Buddhist Tantra. And I still need to discuss with the Tibetan medical experts, traditional medical experts about this. I would like to learn more about. So this is Buddhist psychology as a framework, okay? So in the future, if you want to look about Buddhist psychology, then you have to enter from one of these gateways. And my specialty is Abhidharma psychology. Among the 4, I chose to research on the Abhidharma psychology. So then what, we narrowed down to Abhidharma psychology. And then what is about Abhidharma psychology? What talks it about? Is then Abhidharma psychology deals or explains and demonstrate what is mind and then what is mental factors. So these two are the key elements of Abhidharma psychology we all need to understand. Okay? So then, how Abhidharma defines mind, then we look into some characteristics of mind. It says, mind is clear, semni salva, and then mind is aware, semni rigpa, and then mind is experiential, and semni nyongwe tanyi. So, salshing rigpa nyongwe tanyi is the characteristics of mind. But what I want to clarify here is it may sound very religious, but actually not. From Abhidharma point of view, that we all actually already has these 3 qualities of mind. Di jidan khenpo di kechim shur di danda di chögi tone sem shegi yomare an ngara samalaya sem yin yoba tsamjigi an sem gi salwa yimba dang sem di rigba yimba dang sem le nyonga yoba di ngosum ki chugu yos shugurwa di injimi ji khenang orda kena chö chero ma jero kena chö le yije yoro meno nambe ki tadu tone sheba yina ani sem la salvi rangshin di yores chene ya labgyore di labgoy gyumsen de gares lawa yina ngaran tsugi pena mik zombi negabla inaya kirangi kanjimla soba salwa chartubegi nuba yobadi sem salvi rangshin imbalten chungu yores di shugarwa an dana shingi semge rigbas cheondu kala ngaran tsugi wangshi gyuni inayare ishi gyuni inayare an semge yunzingi chawa chebadi kaya mebaji kona mik tangwa zamjigi yul tongtugidwa di korangi ane karsubure linjigi kejuda nubarada di. These are intrinsic qualities of mind, okay? It is not artificially mandated or labeled. This is the difference between emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. You know, to get a single artificial intelligence, you have to put millions, billions dollars onto the technology, then it comes out. Whereas when it comes to the mind and its qualities, it is inherited, it is intrinsic, it is a natural part of mind. This is the beauty. There was a conversation once time in a university that I joined debate actually. You know, even these days, almost like a Google claims that artificial intelligence can have mind. You know, but that is a far way to reach. It's a too big claim. The reason in the discussion what I answer is that, no, that is not possible. You know, like if you think that computer can have the natural emotional mind, and that is not a very logical yet. The reason I'm telling you is that you can fix this computer to any CPU and it can make it running. But you cannot cut my head to someone else and make it functioning. That is not. Because every individual has individual mind. And that is not that easy to transfer. Same say the ani tandeng azu the chumi rikshe the keparachim shirayo karsan ngangoman the sodu chilia ani konziti pache mado da computer la ya sem yoba yobu sotu res the keshi. And they can kalga shirares lavi. Nge trupche darai computer the chigni henjil use and can lamso part to get in a mean god digital to check shemajil karna cannot and the technology dying kora yomare. This sombo swag. That's some jigani kansu. Same the kansajigi kule yobala ani mingubegi le too much so. Tujibu diomare. Tiundukala Tindigi doji shadal trubigi thing to same gil lay you want same jiki on the gas deal lamzan kora computer najin jigi language you just carry kora yomar dandati. Tinduga di gumzel denia same sedi ane sarik pemshil pembol tade was in baji shukchembu shuji to gurwa. The deal of Dugas and the Kejitana Chagorda. Tan deeper the Paje Kanile, but the Kendam Chingu. I believe that you know where I took these pictures from. Anyone? Do you recognize where these pictures from? Oh yeah, that's good. Yes. So currently the discussion of mind is exactly what is posed on there, right? Where is the mind? Buddhist understanding of mind, right? The argument why philosophically mind is important in Buddhism is it counter-argues the eternal Atman, the self. According to Buddhist philosophy or even Buddha's finding of enlightenment or Buddhahood is that he didn't find any eternal Atman, that who runs the universe or even like us individually. No, Buddha says if you look into the person, that innate identity, you will only find 5 aggregates. The person is made up of 5 aggregates, and only one is physical, material thing, and 4 are mind among the 5 aggregates. And so how much so deeper you look into human beings, you will not find Atman. That is the fundamental argument of Buddhism, and we all need to understand that. If you want to establish this viewpoint, and this is the reason why mind is so important, why consciousness is so important. I think this is a quote from His Holiness. So this is his argument, and I think the translation, English translation, may be not good. It seems there's a problem, Actually, if you look into the English translation, it doesn't make much sense because the last sentence, destroys everything what has been established. It says there is a self-existing independence of the body and mind. That is not in the Tibetan, actually. I know Tibet Library deals with the laws of translations, and I think everyone needs to be very careful when you translate, because there are many visitors, especially in the Tibetan the museum, and if we take the translation, as the where is the mind, and then this is not actually what Tibetan the writings has stated. Okay, so you don't read Tibetan, right? What do you understand from the English translation? Does it establish self or refute self?
So it refuses self, but the last line says there is a self-existing independence of body and mind, which is contradictory.
Yep. Actually, the Tibetan says that we Buddhists does not believe in an eternal self, but we acknowledge the functioning selves depending upon our body and mind. Okay, there's a designated self that we acknowledge. Yeah, so we need to differentiate the eternal independent self and dependent designated self. Because, I'm going to market, I'm going to somewhere, and that is I. We do acknowledge. So, yeah, so I think, so this is what His Holiness says, right? Someone may ask, what is the difference between consciousness and physical things? In general, matter and consciousness are differentiated by whether they are obstructive, established as clear and aware in nature, merely experiential in nature, and capable of knowing objects. So this is a quote from His Holiness, the book. And what we need to understand is the major differences between the modern psychology and Buddhist psychology is that Buddhists treat mind as a unique entity that is not material. Whereas the modern psychology argues that mind is actually substantial. It's born out of nerves and brains. When one dies, mind also stops. There's no such carry forward things. Whereas in Buddhism, we argue or we believe that mind carry on the life from one to next. And that is a major difference. Tanda nubjogi semkam rigbegi ton shuba ina konjugi semdi zele tadebe yoba tanda kelen tuwo mare. Sem sari chi yimbadi tanda konju kelen tuwo mare. Ta tsagi yore tingsan tanda ta konju yar karichi yorlana ngoma mi kembala modo paji pugula yang sem yome tezum saye dine ke shiwa. Ta tingsan pugu jema tawba ne kola ya sem seye chawa de dusye de kelen yorwa. Tezum shi kelen yorwa. Ina yang leba le tan debegi ani sukbodi shaani semji tsayo yorosandi tanda nyegi yomarisi chila yorwa. Ina nambegi nganzu sem seyedi ani sukle tadebare shaas. Ko kewa ngaji tsangwa rongo chigi lega dini chigi dusye di tanga kebar chesho shiri di kema nangwe di keshim shirarda. And tanda di semle ya synonym, there are some synonyms of minds, right? So it is known as a mind, sem, chitta, and then we also know it as a mentality or yi or manas, and we also know it as a consciousness and namshe and vijnana, and then we also know it as a cognitive awareness or rigpa or sheba or jnanam. So there are different terminologies, but actually they all come into the point of mind that is clear, that is vivid, that is aware, and that is experiential. Dinyam duchi kembana go education bukare sana nyongwa sejura la di huge kitchen bore tanda di pa chilogi seramindu tengrabgi semkam rigbada nambegi semgi nigi ton she ondu kan la ani nyongwa sed experiential ruwa some bogs se ta digi tone ani sem seji tumo mai duk se di munzi che di keche ruwa labar du ya ani nambegi ton sheba ina nyongwa se du chorbarwa chorba dile teni deduk samegi lega chegi yob sonza ani di chorba dile teni lendegi ani keje diang di tol pap di yure di indu kan la semla nyongwa yobi gyumzengi an deduk yobare deduk yobi gyumzengi deduk la kyuda diwu yob sonza ani ko le gyunde se di yobajik an dini kengu yorwa 하고 고고유도 디케션 부시라래 셈 이는 손데 용위 다니 임바디 ken고요다 다디 단다바도 디기드웨 캐나 넘버 딜레 토바유웨 Do you have any questions so far? Are we doing good? 지당 알아주 곰곰세 휴지 교는 게 요와 참에 더 지당이 눕초보 멍부지 거리성으로서 그냥 벼바 인스 라바 잠지게 알레 큐 남버왜 큐 곰게고스 람자 티장지로 마초이 디티거다 디인두간래야 아니 간주기 곰 갸브루 마갸브루 짜와데 아니가 셈게 안신디 따두디 케 can't go is cage shoot chagger. They can't buy in and by no choice is Tiwene till Patos share of Jirwa. So the cage you begin the Shea Masonsa, Kimber is catching. Did you marry and can number Samaya Tabar to Chipachian Genia, same come chicken near to go on your married. Same say in this Sanjay Sumba the Cheba ina, Ani Tandanganzuki Lose laid down, Dab chewing a quite joy than that. It is faster, 15 times faster than the atoms. Tindu Ganlaya, and Ganzugi did near to you, Martin, do on a Karichi Wursana, Tindigi Sem Giranshin, the Ganzugi, Lulu Chewik ups in air, now Shubik ups in air, and some two reflect Chenia, now Lord seek to be the Kajum Shu Chagurda. There is two Dinichenia, now seek Jenny, Ale Samegi, Ani Nedanji Sharion Wikapsu, and when it's an age Karsure. Kanga country in air, and Kibo country in air, Sangma Dindiji Resha, Semiga Muduji, Dini Togurda. On the Dindiji Kale Duchin, Dindiji Leon Dukapsuya, and Kanalaya, Charlie Kalish now in a Della Toba Numa, and Charlie Kalish now in a Delia, Ani Nundop Shuchewa, and Charlie Kalish now in a Della Poa Shuchewa, Tiki Linji Kegurda. Tijania, and can send the Tele Tadibran, she imbaji, K Malene Sonde, and Kazu Kebaji, Nujo Kebadurina, Kajan some Negonsotos Dardo in the Chagurda. Congratulations to the Kangashu Chigurwa. To get someone the same Tele Tade Mavage Kill into and she's a Nigel Susha. The Tangana those you could do in a to Kananda Dejine, Jango Sungur, the Ganazuya, and she launched the gig it's our mares, the Ganazu. And a launch it in Nanglia Tegil Junko, your senior. Can did Chari Kazaka Charshadua. Something Hassan D. Tannerova, Onga Nimatabari Kogi Sor Chane, and Italia Rindan Keshira, Melton Yenga, your Diana, Hajan Montana, on the Indugalicazo, Chari that the delay reflect Nanturwa, the Indutosum consumption. Samba say the reflection to this Nantone, Sharaya was the Shuenda. And then the Nipatinirwa Nipatita Chungomba. So the second major topic I just want to deal quickly is the mental factors. Okay, so mental factors chitta shika or semjung pebek semjung sigurwa pepe tangi the kemanana yago yorda semjung sigurdi tande chungombe nani sem shebe gazu sem tang semjung sedugal sem le chungwa. Semgi chepa. The action of mind, occurrence from mind is called mental factor in Buddhism, Abhidharma. So then there are different categories and different philosophical traditions defines mental factors differently. But here I follow the Asanga's Yogacara Abhidharma tradition. That is the topic of my research dissertation. And according to Abhidharma Samuchaya, the text name, and then there are 51 mental factors. He defines, he categorizes, 51 mental factors. Those 51 mental factors are categorized into 6 groups, and 5 omniscient mental factors, 5 factors with the object, determinate object, 11 virtuous mental factors, and then 26 non-virtuous mental factors, and 4 variable mental factors. So in my dissertation, I have argued there are Western scholars who says the 51 mental factor is the Tibetan's contribution or their identification, but I argued and I have a proof supporting documents. It says Asanga himself actually clearly explains 51 mental factors. It's not a Tibetan's construction. That is what I argued in my dissertation, okay? And if you are really interested in these 51 mental factors, and then my dissertation is one of the latest research on this topic, and I encourage you to read. If there's any problems, you can always reach me via email. Yeah. So this is the general construction, okay? Mental factors. The injimiji kiman nana yaboyorda. Then the nania among those 51 mental factors, Today, I will quickly explain the 5 factors with determinate objects, okay? Because it has a huge significance, even impacts in our life, daily life. Therefore, it is important to recognize those. Among those 5 factors, mental factors, the first one is called aspiration, Dumba. And the second is called resolution or Merpa. And the third is called mindfulness. And the fourth is concentration. And then fifth is intelligence. If there's any takeaway from this talk, please, these are the 5 mental factors you must know, you must learn. So then, what is aspiration? Dumba says, right? Chidang nganjugi pyoge di kyori chimbe kapsu tanye shibo mangu shuju de di tingsam ta pyoge mewa chene changma la ya nganjugi nga kawo yu nga deba yu ta di ni nanglo la paje ma do rik changma dom sha gwa ngone shena ngana zo nang chu pyoge chubu shu di nang la ina an tinzo la semkam drodang tos khaga chene khashi la nga dumba yu re khashi la nga deba yu re khashi la nga deba yu re khashi la nga dangwa yu re and 디게기 케파 참모참모디 켐바이나 디감게 간주기 캐나서 나랑라 타니에디 베주땅와이나 부우즈 제마디 셴기르다디 캐나서 다데 게게 당보도 파마로 나이 아니 캐나서 가주 다게 식 베주 슈체와 나와이나 디감게 아니 베베기 깨이디 아니 추보 추르노래 안디 마이버제네야 아는 간주기 갸가르 슈겐주기야 갸가기 깨도 슈심부지 네팔 슈겐주기 네팔 게게 슈심부든데 아니 파 치로 단데 카르수레 아리다 티쇼 인지케 gemnyezul shugensу 디기 깨데 데데데데 제바이나 아니 칼레칼레 베베게 랑신데 파 마루 로이지마도 메로 다디 카르스 게 셰버 제발 신주 죽숨 세지 고고르다 디 네게기 원드 제바이나 마고 순정 군지 원드 제바이나 시주 죽숨 제버 제발 당부 비주 땅 거르바다 타니디 셰바데 로자원은 기소에 살아데 이나양 디파 주프 제바데 나를 배주드 마다나 아니 냠도 거다 디 인두간라 인지미지로와 배주 땅디 녜 단데디 데 균이야 차상래 레구슈 가주 투두지게 보게 참 엔지네 배주 땅으로 지스지지로와 다 당부된 간주 단데 aspirations 에 둠바세 들와 and wish to obtain the desired object 코 그래서 그러지 율 ngeje chigla ani ngati kogidu sambe lo tangbu jugi chirwa andelia ani aspirations. Aspiration is the first rising of mind that you were looking at specific object and desiring for it. Okay? And that there's a desire in general that does not require any efforts. Keba diyorda. Also depa samjigla ani kerangi telaya ani cholo ko mare papa thomegi mixegi ani di simju ngaji saldu khariji tyoyore tanda ngomban zoela sobale kebar du kharicheyore neden devi semgamli kebar kharicheyore kongi kebar shesho di cheyorda dele yul ngeje ngas sugar karsana yul the object ro pa yul chi ngebe thoni kenala zimbar chebala until cholo ko du sonyorwa 아니 될 군도 가스타위나 아니 콜 졸바 게 고기요 말다 로레 되바케 버선지 콜 가두이네 게 초초로 주고 될 슈크체르 전에 둠바지 졸바 고고 디잖아 아니 aspirations 될 슈크체르도 간라 아니 resolution am 메바스기로 가시기 determination 다들 인지기 치 카카가 규리요와 메바스지 they preserve the determined object accurately 다 계란기 페나 파톰을 치는 얘기 잘라도 녀고 신이 당보 깨직지기 semba 깨버는 숭데 아니 듬바체 메발을 랩두 가라 딱이나 파지마도 잘라도 녀갈 로냥메 투질랩 사버다 디케만 나고래 듬베 가서 파지 나올 대샤버다 안 더바케 가서야 녜로 토부들 잘라 야고스도 ngala chuna sambe gazu tango deobadi kerta di tangoro wa atati ni shucher chindi dinerta ani tembe gaus garchi gorsena ta kyana Tiring sem le chi kor, sanyi chi kor, ni kor chin ku yanjo bija tan ma che te she gorda. O tindi ji le yani mindfulness che la gu yorda di chidangi mindfulness e di one chane nge tande di dissertation ki one chane tsawa di nge ki recollection la gyur ko yor, gyur ye ki nge tabshe re da. Ina ya nubjo la da tingsa temba am smriti am satis che pali nal le yorwa. Di chigyur chane mindfulness shaudu ane nge tanda lobdumba kishi tubdin jimala konangi kina mila pendo chewe tuyandala ane mindfulness shana yagres che ka naso ane konang songa dagaran tsiji ane mindfulness shayi ina ngore ngarangi debata chewe ane recollection shana samso kasi mindfulness di tang recollection nyele keba kari yoros lawa ina ane mindfulness di pache mato virtuous mental factor kevi rangshinji ki sem ki chele cha sawari ane tempa samjiki kewa chagi maare di papa thome indu sheparwa tempa samjiki kewa kasi tempa migewe tempa gyakse tempa yorwa di kewa chagi yo maare di indu kaala di gyumzen di chene ane tempa samjiki la di tanda ke mege tanyum nane tanyum ki semgi rangshin imba sonzang ane tempa di recollection la shana yaya dawji tindire ta di labdu kar lego tempa sidu kaala ane okay so my primary translation that I wanted to translate of that Smriti Sanskrit terminology is into recollection. Okay, not into mindfulness, but for the sake of benefiting readers, the English has almost like a unified that translation as a mindfulness. And my supervisor's suggestion that I follow his instruction and I kept mindfulness. But the difference between mindfulness and recollection is that mindfulness is almost predetermined as a virtuous mental factor, whereas recollection stays a neutral state. So therefore, actually, according to Asanga's argument, the mindfulness or the recollection is supposed to be a neutral mental factors. What we need to understand when we speak about mindfulness is it is more related to the past events. Tempas labdu khadu ina yang debi chol khate yorwa. Tempa kona tadaware de yul ko deba dikanya su koyong. Ti koyong yore. Ani ngarazu kechimo mixe gi nyamlen chigo kharasan tingsa ani konazu research ki tengure ani same kam ni nyam ro du sigurwa mixe ki tempa dang attention digi samade ba nyam ne ani pugu yenje lobdal tingsa kyun tempa yago mindu te go twije de tindegi attraction mountain distraction mountain ya an tinde mindu che la yorwa tindu ngala dil ngazu changsu chena it is not naturally born, it is a nurtured mental state that we all can have better mindfulness if we train well. Nyamlin chewaina sui yubi chalaro dogo komshi yabutan chewaina practice chewaina tindu gala ngana samala temba nyambi kanga di yudu andi kya shoba ngawo lane sonde ani chude chegi nalo la detail cheni ya pa reverse cheni kari chen kya tuzu yana din sigdang di tande di contemporary konjugi practice din chigorda ngazu tanda ngazu di ora tenyam ki tindi kanga mabushi yoredi attention deficit dao tang ro tindi kapsu ina ani konsu practice tindi chiju do kena shokba ne kanga cheba tengi dewe andi kena dang ne chene chuzi ni sabshi na la step re chene chuzi chig la kari chene tengi dewe chene kari di kena gi kyartu tada chitu go ne kena tempa tada teyo tara kasi di mena ani kena gi di kanga mabushi yo ata kari insomnia tindi yorida di tempa tungi kanga mabushi o tinde nal chugur o ti indungal di nyamlen chi go ke chamro and then the temba de nyamdu ani concentration the fourth mental factors that to determine the object is a concentration. Actually it is a powerful progressively building these mental factors to bring better attention, and once we come to concentration and then actually we are on the very high state of mental state when it comes to the focusing on the object. Tingen zin le se du chi khona tingen zin do samadhi du kala ko 하장기 율될 녜시 여바점도 마세지기 지점 되어봤다도야 아니 딱딱네 샤투기 위께지와 띵 녜라도갈 만나네 균투네 아니 진스도 율디파 딱딱 모시베 돈 생기 위께지와 띵스도 갈 남도 매위기 아니 콜야 가제 매위께지와 우트리치토네 so I was explaining this in a Tibetan translation, which is even better than Sanskrit. I would argue like that, you know. Some are the, but in Tibetan, ting, nge, jin, there are 3 syllables, and each syllable really carries the value of concentration, you know. So this is the beauty of Tibetan Lodzawas, which these days very difficult to, you know, translate like this. As being single-minded on the examined object. This also does not necessarily a virtuous mental factor, okay? The concentration can be used into both virtuous, non-virtuous, or even neutral. On a negative side, is if you are well trained in these, actually like the United States or the many countries, the snipers are trained with these elements. And konzu dini chigorwa. Ngazu tanda mahjong nangla ya ani diri memda siwu gaya dizugi ani training di kangla ya pechudang yorda. Di shanang sawu shuji yordi. Di induga kansana yul tila mikpa shuji shani tabgo gorwa. Di induga la ani tada kono pautu yorsa. Konzu training dini teche ni ani sniper ki ani pancho kapde di mew sutang gorwa. Di induga di yesangla di nyanga di yordi. And di jela ani intelligence. Di yang tanda di sherap se di chida tanda ngazu wisdom la ya gyuriye yorwa. Gyurgu yorwa maang chaya chigi. Ina ngen di tanda ani tangyom ke mege tangyom sumgi nana tangyom imba sonsa ngen intelligence la shayo. Gyumsi shagoye gyumsen di yin. Di indu dela ya da nyora maang bushu yorwa tanda. Dona sherap ki intelligence am sherap ki chawa karichigi yorwa slawa ina. Ngopanamji rangsen mandewa chik dire, di chosere, di kubjare, di kabore, nakbore, lega di chasang sherab chigurwa. Di induko sherab imba samjigi, aniko o ta sanje ki ndoye ki lega chires, di marita di. Semgi chele tumo ma imba chagurgo. Chidangi sherab chida semgi chale chasang yuerde, ina ya ngenzingi sherab, yul ngenzingi sherab di, ani ko zolwa che ni chungyeji mato, zolwa mena anti sherab di legi mare. Di shukche cher chima ina, and these intellectual capacity, the cher. So the intelligence is that which discriminates the examined object, meaning it is not necessarily be religious, okay? It is a kind of mental factor that one has better capacity to recognize and seize the object, a particular object, that you chosen one. And that is the function of the characteristics of intelligence. The better intelligence you have, the better intellectual you become. That is the nature of intelligence. Chitsamgi chuenamji rabiegi ani namsha di shukchewa yoba dezamji kebegi samlo di gyacher nugurwa. Kebe nuba cher nugur. Di ndugala. Otan di jigdenbi toni tanyere ani jela ya chuela gyurierwa. Tadi injimji tinsunga di ta ngazuki dumba meba temba tinzin sherab shene ya boba ina lela ushuji do di kandyo na ji george ani ta dini talk dini di kenana ya boyerda ale dele yul ngeje nga seidu an degi jide ki chawa saman dini rudu tushur saman dini rudu la success yan dini rudu di injimji tare nga sheba chiwa asam shene ya ani dumba meba temba tinzin sherab sherwa Andi daga tsig kaala jibu masha wache ne, an to suji ya tila ya reflect che nirwa. Samjungi to ne ya tsu tewa ina, an shira ya wayo res, samgi du ta nge. Ta digi dire karsa wachi, studies ki tengi yore, attention deficit se yorwa, ADHD se ki ta nasa chire di, tempa nyambe nasa chik tang, ani mikpa tempa tubi nasa chik. O digela training taji ngegi ani shubegi dumba meba tempa tenzi sherab di yagbu yue ne korim dik tuba ina anti nazat yongu mare things on Zamulin Kanga Chekaj ready. Mayo Clinic research reporter. The Indukala. The Mayong Tapshi Yure, Tapshi di Naranzugi, Dumba Mobateba Tinzishar, Naranzo like Sherik Chupo di Nani, same come to be shared the Yobasonsa, and the Naranzuk Tanerwa, Karis Chut. Dumba Keg Dumindu, and Dumba the Yobaina, and digital temper the Keg in Mindu, Tenzin Dumindu, Sherab Dumindu, Moba Dumindu, Tuchitagi Tagi 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 Sherwa, and this year. Kazi Kanangi didn't go Mazimba Ina, and Kanangi Nala Kom, which Allah someone knew Shagita. Never Kovichala didn't, Mago in Doba Chesun Vichala Nidi, Yevasu Shigersena, you'll get young and the Chirda. Tindukala, Digi do say Tejane, and New Shevaina. Can now levegi chala the cockroach in Kenya lire and Lama the can bank balance latiro. The Yawashurte. The in the two shade of Lenana Yawerta, that the Garanzo le Yubiration Chupo di Pasha and a change in the Ajikzan, Edu Changtup Dana, dear some details Pangbrus Yurdi. The Indugala. The Nachiga Lovian Shell and Rogway, Gumsen di Chingemi, you detect things on Zamuling Shukin Shukin with Tevi or Sons. 다 누조기 시리 제모디 니 직렙나 냠용 칸티 시 두시 따이 마도 나야 아니 낭비 취래야 가랑기 이제당 녜시 껴단 딩아 로메다 데 콘솔에 탑람 추고 시우도 이나양 콘스 시연들라 아니 개메게 랑도게 남샤다 미유 개요 말데 시연 제모레레니 걔나 크리미널 슈체쇼도 차기다 자에게 년가 속인데 누조기 시연이 되요 Aranzuki Sujungi Nambata, the Shengi Tony Chamaina, Midi, an ethical roa. Sudim the Demi Mijik Suetu Gorda, Namju Mijibumari, Namshu that Sujungi Chudin, Lojon the Tevaina, Midi Shiku Sankosotu Gorba, the Keju the Yermatu, Nojogi Tolam Nalachima and Canandi, Shiku Sambuji, Cholam number tab Mijik Sogmarda. And the evidence Mongodoa. Jebri Epstein ki case tang as Tondoro file ka switches. Me lobjon je mong shushi do adi. O dinde chene ya ta ding kem nang gorda. So so yebi sheri di kana zu nyamle nang to beina. Ani pendo chom shushi res. Ta ding e ngaram pet nyon ya. Chaza kora gyab jin dang e kana shu yo da di. Ta konda tizu paji la tos nge teba simba indo kam chu siji. Ro ani I think I took more than the time given to me, 10 minutes. I just want to thank you everyone for your patience and participations. And I'm Tibetan and this is my story. So the reference book, if you ever have a deeper questions and if you're curious about my talk, and then please read these two books compulsorily, okay? Yeah, Science and Philosophy in the Indian Buddhist Classics. The volume 2 is called The Mind. If you know Tibetan better than English, I suggest that you read Tibetan. It is first or mother tongue, and it has an inherent meaning that gives you that are lacking in English translation. But these are most like translated as an independent text, so it's better. And there's a contextual essays between these books, so therefore it's better. Otherwise, not. So then my dissertation is quite academic and right. Unless you know well about the academic writings, then it may be not useful right now. In the future, I'm going to publish it, simplify, and then publish a book. Maybe that time it can be useful for your reference. Okay, for like a few minutes, do you have any questions, answers? Yeah.
So, as per the Buddhist philosophy, there is no self, right? Self. Yeah. So, it's like all five aggregates and there is no permanent eternal self. But in everyday life, we make decisions, we make choices every moment. So there is choices are being made, but there is no choice maker, no decision maker, right? So it means like this mind-body aggregate is running like a pre-programmed machine. This is my inference, maybe incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
It's so. There is no free will, right? It is all predetermined. It is like running like pre-programmed machine.
Mm-hmm.
And And if there is no free will, then there is no scope of self-improvement. Like, how do I decide, like, I should practice mindfulness, I should practice concentration to improve things? So I am destined to live the life I am living, the miserable life. So this is the, like, basic doubt or paradox I want your answer.
Thank you for your question. It's very profound, by the way. I already corrected the probable mistakes, right, in the translation. Actually, Buddhist does not negate or refute a functionable self, okay? Because this is very logical. If you refuse that to accept, then Buddhism is not logical anymore. Buddha Shakyamuni himself said, I am the Buddha. I teach Dharma. He said that. That means he also agrees the existence of I, means self. But Buddhist does not agrees with the eternal self, which creates the universe, which governs the universe. That is not the case in Buddhism. So when it comes to the free will, then there's a very complex karmic system in Buddhism. Buddhism is not fully predestined religion, nor it is a fully free will religious tradition. It is like a 50-50. Okay? There's a previous karmic influence that leads your life. At the same time, you have right to modify the future life that you want to live. That 50% actually allows you to reach enlightenment by yourself. Whom you are can be Buddha. Not someone gives you Buddha. Or in many religions, that you never can be God, right? I don't know which religion you follow or you not. But there are many religions that you can be only messenger, but not the God. In Buddhism, it is not like that. Everyone can be Buddha because there's a potential. The potential is basically the mind. And Buddhist does not deal with that is not logical.
So every time there is a doubt, everyone can be Buddha. Who's the everyone? There is no one actually.
Yeah, there's a very good argument, but here you need to distinguish between the relative understanding and ultimate understanding. Okay, when you say everyone and no one, that is a self-contradictory. Do you understand? It is saying like, I'm full and I'm hungry. Is that possible? No, that is not possible in the conventional language. Yeah, so it's a similar like that. Yeah, when there's a everyone, you cannot agree with the no one. But I mean, like, you are welcome to debate, huh? Yeah. Thank La. Di sung yinbe, pandi. Ale on di. Di marera. Di re ba?
parola di 집안다 돈지 먹는 정도를 저도 가려요. 디 조지지라. 안전히 받이다 심지 지시정도 봐라. 먼저 그게서 신디카요레스.
도지체.
이 먼저 시세지세요. 내가 시는 가지도라면 굿가 녹음지는 조비는 배차는 굿가 리시는 뭐보더라고.
도지체.
이 먼저 시세지다 냄시가 어떻게 냄시디 제제와는 지지라고. 아니 냄시디 당분이 년 바빠지 요리요 말이 단단한 요비 신디던 집발에 양나 단단한 요비 이 시세리가 다지 심지와 냄시지와 디 니바 초르도 거리 런자래.
도지체.
That is very stupid question.
No. It's all questions are very good as well as very profound. I may not have answer to all of your questions, but I will do my best wherever I can. Okay? 이따게 정말 더 내용도 거말 가서 뒤와 사부 휴지로와 파 개원들이 치료를 하고 계제인데 유머들 다 당부 딘딘지 나나와 다 남비 땡주 까드 땡주 시송체 온도 셈다 이다 남시 숨디 든직 민기 남장 임바디 티과 투몽 시버레 티과 투몽세도 테라와다이나야레 넘버 지 따수시레 다야 단다 티과 공마 티과 쳔부 딘dik 까무디 쉬운도 갈라 또 조지 파 차른도네 아니 셈다 이다 남시디 찍바 샤게오 마레 찍바 가르치 샤게오 마레 제용도 값수 셈세딜라야 아니 렉처네 찌따세다 찌땅세지 니 유베나니 단데 베바디 자와들이큐리 단데디 셈세죠라 고 삼로 땅게디 디쇼르 균이 찌땅르 균이 아니 제여와 찌 가르선 찌따세도 갈라 싹바 세지래야 귤제니 가르선 레기 누바사마 뿡사도지 세미바소나 찌따세 싹바세 디규르 디와 고마주게야 믹세기 파보 토메기 셰버도 진 디차요레 아니 이 세두간라야 마나스도 이 세두 코양 투모 마이베기 똑베기 삼버치긴지 똑바 코란 찍부기서 베나 셈디 렌데 바잔 조사 땡이나 아니 이데 아니 abstract conceptual thought 디 창아 이디 야마 레가치오레 이제 아니 남시스라도 땅아주 슉체쇼 공의 시에바네 율 카토이나 자와체 되겐기 율린 주겐기 텔야 넘버 셰바스 그 가리 셰게르슬라나 율 셰게르 남시 율진바 이슈스니 여러와 몸즈나라 어디 율 인두간라 아니 타비토니 케버 두스체고 셈다 남시라야 아니 라비토니 셈다 이다 남시 숨디 든직 민기 남랑스엔 숭유레 드가랑 캐나 켈렌샤르 간세나 먼저 베베 지조나라 이네레 야가 지조나라 이네레 아니 릭치기 셈망어 베주당기레 릭치기 남시 망어 베주당기디 양 코란즈 지조당 오메 릭슝 슈겐테드만지르와 어딘지라 두숨 셰샤나 디고레 타기랑 지번이버디 아니 가란즈 디네 신루도 갑수야 아니 도겐 간디주 딱 당부디도 그냥 신도베 갑수에 나 톰직 차교레스제라와 딥땅 나양문이 제와 망불 시산에 댕기 메두 간라 데 갑두 라투 마르데 이네 까텐주 갱냐 롱두 간라 단다 도지여와 아니 다가 이시기 도세이시 디나로 페 포인트 nga 내가 심 슈지송여레 아니 단당고만 멘동 참바슈니기 드럽 주구게 라마셔 고랑기 치베 랍자 된신 좁게세이셔 디나로에 내가 최소중에 가르통서세나 지단케나 딕바레 메게바레 까리나에 교바께스 이나 시가라몰 타마들라 치즘들라 큐누코나 교보 마게웨지네 셈디 랑싱기 강샤고르다 세랍제 디갸베르다 디인두 ngaran sama di nega 심 슈지르디 간르세나 치가 마이기 셈디 파 바르도체 아니 케와 치말 참 저게 인두간라 콜 뉴바샤오요레스 제라고요르다 디요 간르세나 지점 셈디 가디 뉴바샤 부샤고르세나 풍보를 잘도 뉴바샤고르다 지점 풍보 나라 샤사비 풍보 라마 시디 나라 샤사비 제수 아니 셈디리야 담도 징겐지 요바송상 디니 탈투 말와 안 디제네 안주 단데 파르도기 치나라야 셈디 풍분의 달롱도 파두 내가로네 셈디 아니 리바페 똥라 군주르게 고 스피드 차이로 제가 뉴르와도 상황이로 디 인도 가수 아니 치셈디 인지 민지기 지단기 당념다 이르데 이나 치가 라모라 셈디 흘러 밥투베디 당하나주 내가 지금 캐나 나라주기 분자 총주고 있나래 파마 총주고 있나래 라니 총주고 있나래 다들 가르치고 그러세나 인지 민지 치가 라모들라 셈디 흘러 밥시 밥투어지 고도 시에네야 근데 송여도 다가 이식이 도도 대화도 디나로라 디누가라 디 캐나게 내가 지금 쉬우지래 다 캐나 디네야 또시 빼맹아 셴나 쉬우지기도 세나 아니 가르치고 그러세나 안 또시 상하게 나라 냠리 들려 사오시여와 지단기 치와 추구 차르와스 라고르와디 치와 추구 차르와스 용도가라 낙톰디 신투나 상제레 상대가나 게르와다 상하 루솔이야 심하도베이나 아니 리방고 마드니 계진이버디 바르도 캠겨로 디 인도간티 따디 캐나기 양 트레이닝 지단라레 어디 찍대지러와 안나 디다긴간주 남베 따딜야 투브다 카수주기 쪼바 여르마도 계자 투몰라 남바지 이니 송데 계완디네 계와치말은 로겐디 셈레세나 데랑 갈바 큐니요 마르타 데가랑 갈 켈렌 로고레 균진 델라테니 수 간주기 풍보델라야 찌라 풍보가이 풍보시기도와 니바델라야 가르라고라나 아니 민수기 풍보시라고요 수기 풍보디 샤에라르와 이나 남시디 통해 매버선서 콜 민시고 남시기 풍보다 민기 풍보 찍버다 디인도가나 캐나 시사나인지 민지기 라마 찌찌니니 군들이야 아니 민디 테토치고도 균제 가르지 쿠디 리프레젠테티브레 디 간사디기 어 미디 시존스라니 이게 디테샤도 딱딱하게 치고르다 디인도가나 어디 균제 딜레테니 아니 모든 슈도 가서 민테토치 수이나요 가서 춘된디 레기 누비 개반딜 미디 냐냐 라브네 바자도 콤데디 남시데레 미르디스 라오즘 지고 니체루 시저비스 어디 민수기 데와디 요선자 아니 남시세도 조상도 시도를 스티슈에지르와 아니라 숨바 가르치서 대기 디와 싱아지 요선 답하지 디디기도 두지체 디 내가 전부 휴지르다 다디 로와 다디 다는 안주기 가리켄 거였으나 지단기 공기 돈이 쉬운데 땡엔징기 돈이 쉬운데 니디 지단 갈겐을 시작이요래 이나 지단 권한기 차리 샤와이나 니디 겐기 또기 개발을 줘야다 당용을 줘야다 미겔을 줘야 또요래 딱 야쇼 가리요라는 낭비 셈감 리베 나네 니디 셈중이 뭐르지고라 코 셈기 차시에 마도 레비 제기 차시 말다스 제따 띵오네 자네기 땅이 나랑 용화기 두고요다 캐나 니지 야고지 냐고 삼나로와 셈디 땅념을 샤는 거랑 흘려샤 샤다 다가라니 구르 다가랑 거랑 깨지 거랑 까마치기 나올 남자 니 두고 디카르선 셈디라 디니디양 셈기 제레임 따로와 다 딜레 ቄ 가리여스 라웨나 아니 캐나기 베나 치 튠겐레 워 카르보레 아니 칼라 베나 딩산샤 차샤웨나 포션 슈크첨부 사나니 마고 그래 차주 슈크체와에는 니 마고 그래 디 검게가 시에요레 곰견으로 하고 곰라야 아니 친구니 있으네 샤교레 친구나리 니연도 그래 디견에 이나양 최대의 돈이 니디 산지게양 아니 류 세다 니다 렉처와 텐진 류 계규시 송여로 뒤즈 냐워 차워서 송여로디 디도 니디 백게진으로 수부제라 디인도가라 오투시니 니디 세미발 원진체 아니 셈디양 땅념을마도 니 구금에 원진체니 파르투기 셈 로에디다 니기 셈 로에니디 타오여다 시우지 니오로디 콤바자운도 가르스나 단데디 니 쿵르비 내가블라 공이 시에바 상마 마팀로와 팀네 가시기다 군시 남시 세주 디데라 가시 바자기 남시 딘디기 토라 조거다 곰 슈크첨부 야와당 아니 팬트 차와당 아니 니 쿠바 딘디 갑스이나 아니 이시기 내가 야마체디 콜리오 말레거 고백거는 가서네 디가도 셈 타모지랑 강 로거와 어디 인도 간라 어두시 니기 셈디 딘디질 원지시고래 다디 상하던 대회이나 아니 내가 시세해줘와 Pardugi negab the Kagare, Nigi negab the Kagare, Sumbi negab the Kagare, and Tajumam, and Tingin, Gobi Nyumjugi negab the Kagar, this Shidilla, and Donna Mijigi, negab she Chasan Sangurda. What the Kagaimba, what do she Lasso. Lasso. Conda, Dangy County, Tizuma was Senso. Lareo. Lasso. Oh, in the May. No. 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 Laos.
Technology mind sim host li mare impossible shot jamason
Las.
but saying yes to na how Google TikTok series now same possibility AI mind the same consciousness the host shape the name and it will marry so much maybe possible
Oh, Tuji said the Canada soon on pay out. Tuji said.
Feeling like the emotion like
oh, really.
The emotion like the thinking emotion the feeling like 6 euro
Lasso. Tujiche, oh. Chidangi Tananganzuki Tiva de Yella specialist expert here. Penangan the Korangi translation Gitiva the Nye opinion share Chenamado and the Tandanganzuki terminology Tempe Chicken Soba Yerwa. But the one is a Kunzuki Delaya. Land of Shre. The Tiwa the Katun Leti emotion the Pogel career humorous, the young Shatam Koran Alia, the Pogel humorous concept the Koran lay Martian song. The Induganga Kabdu Koran Shushaki, the humorous. In a Mewa di and Anzu things two cages share on the condition drill chain or Kashi Semsor, Kashi Yonsor Sidwa, Yonsor. The thing Anzu. Dudungi challenge until ya Tache Kimbonamiki, Taju Chene, and Ganzu Chigurki Tanya Peshutan Tapsitangore. It takes time. Tanya Chigur soil, Shiju Jusundi, Kashela lo Nishum Jugo, Wakashelo Katago. Did Chene and Mirab Chemadi, just get Chigur Kana Peshutan to Gora. Tangi Shue Di, the Dimadonga Kabdu Telia Lemes Shue. Can you somebody carrying? Nubjo get tablam chirwa. Perang Kabdu Shuena, and Gunde Tazanangi, Tablam Chibut Carriers, Lavena, Lonzin. Lonzin Cheni can Yabu Yunani, any Kabdu Jortum, Canada Antambure, think your madam Canada Pelrata. Oh, the Tirwa. Or that Nubjo in a Tindi Mayimba Cheni, Mutu Laling Tone, and Tambu curriculum Chigun Ducala, Tanga. Look to Chibu get a shame, again be a get shield. I bought again Chinu Maziji training rocker wagon. 당부 딜라 개개인 롭주니 쟤는 롭주 줘. 삼로 당조 줘와 authority 숙청 부시라요 말. 롭주 줘오지니 내가 지고로마도 개개인 줘오지니 내가 지혜요 말. 랍시다 개개인 되기로와 고미디요와 되기르데 이내 개개인 롭주 줘오지니야 지적으로. 아니 니바델라야 아니 셀리버스 지금도 값수 average 미망되기 롭좀 가수 셰자레 딜라다는 지고로마도 미직니지 케바 착사선 디스튜는소예요 말. 배는 건데 자장이 롭좀 망쳐지 가르샤고르슬란드와 직배 가시지 제부 차야지 하마 셴바드 상마 교회 강샤셔시로. 디 건지 미유 말에 노죠. 시리기 당부 pedagogical approach스로와. 고림 지금도 권한이 미망 롭좀 여버서야다. 모두 미직니 케바서야 말해. 딩가라서 베빌란레나라 두스랑 따고 그러다 지나. 디 내가 좀 쉬도와 쉬어 여르다 디 컴베타산 나로래 아니 디그리 계획이 니주 된거와 숨 쉬지 빽해봐요래. 시험바 망부지기 아니 오피스기 이게 익상이 이게 제 지식이 말다. 내가 된거 어때? 딩이 뭐에 내주이로. 아디 상먹고 겹사로와. 따디 투줄 가리 당겨라나. 미숨 개바스 줍든디 배주 매줘서 싫어. 안 제절 코트로 당게 신경 먹게다. 게스 야마 오르게다. 인주디 계시 디그리요다. 켄포 디그리요. 디제나 만조로 좀 매어 차서. 따들로 좀 매어 차나 가 타돔디 디시션을 껴게 그러다. 지조지기 타주 제일 껴게 그러다. 너절 가지 그래. 나 뭐이라 좀 따따대로 그런 graduate term bazam지 콘주 pen master term bazam지 코란 주게 린당 디지기래라 내가 나신 부들라 딱딱 롭션 되어다. 그 마스터 트윈에서는 디 템비 내지기 코란 게 이게 두고나야래 로고나야래 퍼블리시고나야래 아니 매니지고나야래 딱딱 그 제일디. 디게 상마디 탑람지 돈 레거와 그 간대진 망조 롭죠 대투르시디. 디도네요. 안단 디는 지구 말에 파워포인트 대도와 아니 파이 차트 디 싱아주래. 나디 상마 트레이닝 진 레거와 파테두 간라 카시로와 메기 톤을 론진페 야부치 두게네요. 딘들 파워포인트 카시기 리모트이네. 딘솔 파이 차트스네 아니 그냥이 프레젠지 클래스디. 아니 카시라야 아니 대시랑 담는 코페 야부주래. 디톨 대시야. 딘데시네 탑는 남이 나서 따따도 망부 쉬우지요다. 이게 도두이 캐나 랜디 디로. 당연한 주 지조나를 시행 이야기 땅도 땅도에는 야버려 쉬에. 건다 당에 뒤져 망부 쉬울래서 두지체 캐나 남았어.
안다리 켄포 미트리 페이지엔 담시 띵사고 싶으신 생각이고기 담시는 띵사고 싶으시나서 안토시나 쉬이 소소 투즈된 시대 배워되라 안델단다 대동난다 센시랑의 상관에 안대평의 상관 토지나 쉬이 하는 것도 토글 토지 레고기 취지나 벽 변제간에 아주 차도지 표시하지 쉬이 I was inviting all of you